I tell clients, I kind of look at it like a moral outrage that you do work that you don't get paid for. I mean, you would never do that if you were an employee, ever, period. You would never say, I'm going to give you 8 hours a day. You can pay me for, 6 hours. I'm fine with that. That's cool.
Welcome to Dental Momentum, the podcast dedicated to lively discussions on business and financial strategies tailored for dental business owners. At Duckett Ladd, we're committed to transforming your business journey and supporting you at every stage. Join us as we delve into the keys to long-term practice success, from cutting-edge accounting and strategic tax planning to personalized business strategies. Together, let's propel your dental practice forward with unstoppable momentum.
Bill, what's happened, man? Back to class.
Good to be back putting on the professorial cap, I guess you could say.
I like it, man. Well, yeah, just kind of recap here for listeners. If you haven't listened to an episode in a while, right? This is kind of a series that we're doing on how to diagnose your dental practice. Go back a couple episodes, right? As we kind of went through speed financial statements, kind of overview of the three big questions, which I'll just go into real quick, which is 4 questions, I should say.
Yep.
Do you have a production issue in your dental practice? Do you have a collections issue in your dental practice? Do you have a spending issue in your dental practice? Or do you have a combination of all three?
Yeah.
And we've gone through the production side and then the general overview on the speed financial statements. But today, Bill, it's time to dive deep into the second question, I should say, which is, do you have a collections issue in your dental practice?
Yeah. And this is the one that to me is so interesting because I kind of look at this and say, everyone knows this. There's a metric we'll throw out here. Everybody probably has heard ever since they operating their own practice, with the collection percent. But to me, it's just amazing how many people don't focus on this and don't achieve what they should. And I tell clients, I kind of look at it like a moral outrage that you do work that you don't get paid for. I mean, you would never do that if you were an employee, ever, period. You would never say, I'm going to give you 8 hours a day. You can pay me for 6 hours. I'm fine with that. That's cool.
Yeah, give me 75% of it.
Yeah, I don't want to inconvenience you. But practice owners do that all the time with work that they do. Any production that you do, if you're not collecting it, it's just it's a moral outrage. That's all I can say. And I'm on my soapbox because I try to hammer this home. It's just not right. It's not fair. And then when you factor in, sometimes if you have a group and you're compensating your associates on collections or your hygienists on collections, then you've got a major issue, if you're not collecting appropriately. So I'm super passionate about this one. When it comes to production, there's a lot of operational things that have to go right. There's a lot of things from a coaching, mentoring. There's things that are so far out of our purview that it's hard for us to really spend much time and opine on. That's an operational issue. But man, when it comes to collections, a lot of times it's just, there's problems, breakdowns in our revenue cycle management, and sometimes simple solutions can help. So I'm excited to talk about collections today, and I'll stop ranting on that.
No, I'll probably say it this way. It's probably one of the easiest places to go in and find money that's going to impact the bottom line, right?
Yep.
I mean, it just
agree.
is. So let's just do it. Maybe let's go into those metrics to monitor what we tend to, like to see in dental practices. Make sure that the listeners understand what they're measuring and they're correctly measuring it, right? And then we can go into like why people typically don't monitor this and that sort of thing. So just dive into like the collections percentage, Bill. What is that? What's it mean?
So I'm going to start by saying if you've been listening to this series, we are big believers, and I'll say it again, we like to zoom out to then zoom back in onto where we need to put our focus. And we call that our 10,000 foot metric or KPI. Well, what are we going to watch? It's going to tell us from an extremely high level or that we do have a collection issue or we don't, right? And so I'm going to come in and start by saying, again, this is a percentage that people have heard ever since they started looking to own their practice. And that's that you want that collection percent, which is calculated as total collections divided by total net production, not gross, but net, what you technically can collect, creates your collection percent. And the number that everyone's heard that we are big believers in is that number should be 98% or higher. Okay. Now, this is where we were actually at a conference, and there was a extremely smart operator there who was diving deep into collection percent. And this is a big operation that has a lot of infrastructure on their finance accounting side. And they took that one step further and were actually kind of creating like charts to show how money came in, based upon their accounts receivable and their collection. Their thought was that collection percentage in and of itself is kind of flawed because it's just kind of a point in time number. And they really want to see how much are you collecting of certain types of AR over time, in real dollars. And it certainly is probably a better way to do that. But for most practices and most small businesses or growing groups that we tend to work with, collection percentage tends to be a great starting point to look at whether we have a collection percent. And that's, again, 98%. Now, to try and say, hey, how can we level out blips? Because sometimes you may see 105% and sometimes you may see 95%. And you're like, well, what gives? Well, sometimes money just comes a certain way. And so one way that we try to say, hey, let's try to level out some of those blips is by not just looking at a month over month 90 or collection percent at that 98%, but let's see like over rolling 90 days, is our collection percent truly at 98%? And most great softwares like Dental Intel has that just as a default thing in its view, that you can see a metric that you can see in its default view. Others, you may have to kind of generate that reporting to show you for those, or you may have to calculate. But if you do see individual months or kind of blips that seem kind of misleading, like say it shows at 90% you're concerned, well, look at it over 90 and maybe 90 days, and maybe that translates to 97, 98%, and you're okay. Or at least you feel like you're more able to understand why it had that blip. So that's the 10,000 foot view, 98% collection percentage, total collections over total net production, and maybe consider looking at it over the rolling 90 days that have just happened.
Yeah. And two things there I'll hit on, Bill. I mean, you hinted to the 90 days rolling. And the reason, you have weird months like that, the blips that you referenced, is if you have a smaller month of production, let's say you have a net production month of 100K, and that takes 30 days to come in, right? And then so let's say you collect that in the next month, but that month you had a higher net production, that denominator becomes smaller. So that's why it's key to do the 90-day average, if that makes sense.
100%.
Yeah, 100%. You're exactly. That's what we want. We want 100%, right?
Right. Yeah. Some people are above 100%, just depending on how they collect copays and things like that. But generally speaking, if you can shake out at 98% plus, you are right there where you need to be.
Yeah. And one thing I'll hit on here too, Bill, is, your practice management software should, show this, or some sort of analytic tool should show this. What I would probably recommend is go one more step further and make sure that the collections that your PMS is showing is actually being collected, right? And not taking the software's word for it.
Great point.
Collections only matter if it hits your bank account, right? So that's why kind of taking it one step further, collections per PMS, collections per bank is a key thing.
And that's a fantastic point, Jared. And that's, part of our controller service that we work with is we test each month how is our cash per PM matching up to our cash per our accounting software, QuickBooks, whatever the case may be. And you'll see variances there. There may be deposits in transit, but over time, that net effect should be very, very small. They should match up. Sometimes they don't. And sometimes you get concerned because maybe you see something hit the PM that doesn't hit QuickBooks, that doesn't resolve itself. That could be a leading indicator that there may be a major issue that you need to look in. That could be anything from laziness all the way to malfeasance and fraud. So that's a great point. I'm glad you brought it up. That's something, if you're not doing some people do this on a daily basis. They compare their daily deposit slips to
Yep.
their PM. And that's the ultimate way to make sure you're trying to account for all cash coming in the door is actually hitting your bank and ultimately hitting your profitability statement. So great point, Jared. That's something that is a secondary thing that you can do that really helps try to make sure that you are getting everything into your bank.
Yep. So maybe Bill, dive into when I referenced at the beginning, this is probably the easiest spot where you can find points to add to the bottom line. Just talk through a little numbers here to a degree, like why is that true? I mean, examples or whatever you want to do, but like why that's true.
Yeah, I mean it's super easy to quantify, right? That if you say, "Hey, we're producing at 90 or say $1,000,000 and we're collecting at 90%, what if we could raise that 5 percentage points?" I mean, that's
Yep.
easy math to do, right? What if we could raise it 6, 7, or 8%? So what we tend to find is when we're working with folks and we're trying to diagnose a practice and we're trying to figure out if we have a collection issue, and if we do have a collection issue and it's say 93, 94, sometimes even lower, a lot of times that's some of the very first initiatives that come out of it from an operational standpoint. Or let's throw bodies at this and let's start trying to number one, collect old AR, which we'll get into a second. There's a metric that we're looking at there. But also, are there systems and processes that are broken that are keeping us from collecting what we should? And again, it gets into the broader conversation of revenue cycle management. But a lot of times there's special projects to throw bodies at to try to go get some AR that's out there that's starting to age out that you have a right to. You just got to devote time to going and getting it. And so, again, a lot of times we'll see initiatives come out, and those are the ones that tend to generate or they have the potential to generate revenue pretty quickly. So they're an important way to kind of gain some ground pretty quickly if you can.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's kind of a one-time special project to kind of clean it up, but then more importantly is the second phase, which is fix the overall issue, right, going forward, so you don't run into this issue again.
Which is a perfect segue into the other component of collections. I mean, it's really accounts receivable. There is, if you're a PPO practice or even if you're fee for service, you're still going to have receivables. I mean, it's dental practices are always going to have receivables. They're not going to get paid every dollar up front. They're not on a monthly recurring revenue model. A lot of times they get paid in arrears, right? So you have to make sure that your revenue cycle management is working well to collect and what you got currently, but then also what you're owed from insurance or from your patients that you're keeping on top of it. So a very simple KPI or metric we like to track is when it comes to AR in your PM, you can see it broken down and they'll do what's called aging, Jared. And it's super simple. It's going to show you what's current, what's 30 to 60, 60 to 90, so on and so forth, right? It will show you a breakdown by time period. And I think the general consensus, and everybody would agree with this, is the longer something goes being unpaid, the likelihood of getting paid goes down. I think most practice owners would agree with that. You try to hit somebody up who owes you a patient AR balance of $100 2 years down the road, they're going to say, buzz off.
Mm-hmm.
No way, right? And that's just part of the business. And so you have to see, write-offs. So what you really want to do is build in metrics to track when it gets over 60. I think that's our opinion of when we start to see the ability to collect really starts to fall off a cliff. Current, 30 to 60, it's still fresh on people's mind. You usually still have the ability to collect. So after 60, it just gets tougher. Not impossible, but tougher. So what we want to do is look at all of the AR dollar amounts over 60 compared to the total AR, and we want that percent to be less than 10%, 60 plus, and that's 60, 90, 120, however your system shows it. Anything that's less or more than 60 days old needs to be less than 10% of your total AR. That tends to generate, and some are even lower. Some like it to be even lower. I think that's a moderate goal, not an aggressive goal by any stretch. That's kind of where you want it to be.
Yep. Probably a KPI, meaning monitoring accounts receivable, that a lot of practice owners aren't looking at it.
Yeah.
And you can we're not going to go down a rabbit hole on cash versus accrual by any means here. What I'm saying is you can easily still look at that accrual, the accounts receivable number if you are on cash basis. Might just not be on your financial statements, but it's going to be in a KPI dashboard, your PMS or something. But a lot of people aren't monitoring that, and I don't understand why. It's really easy to peek at, and that's what's going to lower the collections percentage.
Right, 100%.
Increase the collections percentage, I'm sorry.
And one thing I want to kind of bring up, because this has actually come up in conversations, is sometimes data can be misleading too, Jared. And unless you dive deeper, sometimes you don't know. So a lot of times what PMs will do is they'll bury all your credits in your AR balance, right? So what that does is if someone owes you something, it's a positive in AR. If you owe them something, it's a negative, right? And depending on your collection model or however you work, with patients and copays or whatever, there may be pretty substantial credits on people's accounts. They're reducing the balances in your AR. And so that 10% becomes misleading because maybe it looks like you're in good shape, but in reality, if you take the credits out, it's a much, much higher percent. So just as an aside, if you're running this and you can run it without credits, in my opinion, I think that's a better data point that tells you, do you have a collections issue with AR? So, that's one thing I kind of want to mention there. The second thing is I think it's important that you look at patient AR and insurance AR separately. It's good to look at them in total, but it's also important to break those down separately because, Jared, you and I have worked with clients that sometimes one's broken and not the other.
Yeah.
For instance, they're doing a good job of collecting at the desk, but their insurance is not being filed timely. It's not turning around and it drags out. And there's a ton of AR that needs to be cleaned up. Or sometimes insurance is fine. It's getting collected fairly quickly, like you would expect, but they're just too timid to ask for money as people are getting treatment. You and I both actually work with a dentist that they expect us to pay their copay before we even go back and get our treatment.
Mm-hmm.
I can live with that as a patient. I understand that. That's business, right? So it could be on either side. So it's important to kind of look at that same metric, that 10%. Is it a total issue with AR? And then break it down. Is it specific to insurance? Is it specific to patient, or is it both? And that will kind of give you some focus on what you need to be looking at operationally to look to fix.
And you'll be so surprised when you separate those two, if the issue is on the insurance side. And once you look into it, you're going to probably see a lot of claims that have been denied that are not being followed up on. And then you ask the RCM team, hey, why aren't we doing this? I'm so busy just processing new stuff.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to hear that.
Yeah.
That's a process issue.
Yeah.
You've got to fix that issue because that is going to increase your bottom line by increasing the efficiency of that department.
This is the beauty of finance and ops is we present a number and great ops is going to look at that and say, okay, I got my marching orders. I know exactly what we need to do to get this fixed. And that creates an initiative. And then the accountability is we all come back together and say, what's monitored? Is it getting better or is it not? I've seen this happen in real life is that when they focus on initiative collection, all of a sudden, we have where we've been kind of trolling around at the 93, 94%. 1 month you'll come in, you'll have 110%. Well, why? Well, because they're collecting all this AR that they earned in the first damn place months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Period. I mean, it's a pretty typical, easy, low-hanging fruit bang for your buck. It just takes people to do it and someone to oversee it and make sure it gets done. And then if you can do that in conjunction with fixing the underlying issue that's causing the problems, or hire someone to help you do that, that's a great use of your time. And as a single doc, the impact can be magnified. When you have a lot of portfolio, when you have a portfolio of 5, 6, 7, or 8 practices, usually 2 or 3 are carrying the water and you can get by with not collecting on 1 or 2 practices. But if it's your one single baby and you're not collecting, that's going to be a problem long term. And you're going to start feeling some cash flow issues if you don't watch out. So this can affect anybody all up and down the chain. And those are some simple metrics to look at, in our opinion, that will really help. Collection percent and AR over 60.
Yeah. So one thing you said at the beginning, I'm just going to bring back here at the end, Bill, which is you've probably already paid your team or somebody off of these collections already. So I'll just do an example that really might frustrate a lot of dental practice owners here, and this might not be rocket science here, but I think it puts it in perspective. Let's say you got that $1,000 crown that you did the work on, right? And that's the net production that's owed to you.
Yeah.
You've already, if you're paying out based on net production and not collections, right?
Yeah.
You've already paid your team, your clinical team.
Yes.
Lab, supplies, all in, right? Probably around 50%. So you've already shelled out $500 on that grand that you have not yet collected. If you're running 20% NOI, you're probably running another 30 points of just fixed cost. That's your overhead compiled to that, right? So not only are you not collecting that $1,000, you've paid out $800 to not collect that $1,000.
Right.
Let that sink in.
Yeah. So that's on the production side. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was talking about on the collection side. Because if, there are clients we work with that like to match cash with payments to associates, so they pay based on collections. Well, in that situation, it's the exact inverse. You're not paying a associate for work that they've done that they should have been paid for. So they're both of them are terrible situations for you and for your associates, right?
Yeah.
Well, I guess the first one's not bad for the associate, but it's bad for you as a practice owner. But the second one's, again, it's just terrible for both of you. So you're exactly right. I mean, it's important regardless of how you pay your providers. You have to collect that 98 to 100% regardless of that.
Yeah. Such an important topic. As you can see, it's one of the 3 or 4 questions on how to diagnose your dental practice that just gets glazed over a lot.
Yep.
And I think the reason is because the dental practice owner is just assuming, hey, I'm good. Yeah. I know I'm collecting it, right? Yeah. Don't just know, see that you are collecting it by those 2, KPIs you just went over, Bill, which is 98% collections rate. Look at the PMS data, look at your bank account data. Both are extremely crucial. Yep. And then the second, the accounts receivable aging. You said 60 days, right? Anything over 60 days, Bill, that's not yet been collected, it needs to be 10% or lower.
Yeah.
If that's ballooning up 15, 20, it's going to start getting out of control.
And be sure to take out credits when you're looking at that.
Extremely key. So what else, Bill? Anything on the collection side?
Low-hanging fruit, guys.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, almost without fail, when we're starting with a group and they have cash flow or profitability issues, this is almost always where they start their initiatives. Production probably has bigger bang for the bucks if there's production issues, but that's a heavier lift, right? I mean, coaching, mentoring, instilling new pride, whatever the case is, where you're going to try to fix your production issues. Collection issues typically is just systems and processes that should already be in place, and you should be collected. So these tend to be low-hanging fruits. So when we get through all this and we have our scorecards here that people can download and then they can kind of fill in their numbers, my recommendation would be almost without fail, unless you're at 98% plus and your AR's clean, you're probably going to start here, because that's some quick wins, some quick cash in the door, and also stop the bleeding, like you said, to fix things so that going forward, we're not seeing low collection percent and AR balloon up as a result.
Yeah. Game on, man. So we've gone through it, guys. Do you have a production issue? Do you have a collections issue? Next 2 episodes, we're going to kind of split apart the spending side. So we're going to do 2 mini episodes on, do you have a spending issue?
Yep.
And we'll kind of wrap it all back together here. So I hope this is, insightful for you guys. I hope you guys are getting something out of this. Again, this is what we look at. It helps. Tracking the numbers makes everybody better. So, Bill, good stuff, man.
You got it, man. See you next time.
See you guys.